dying to say the following thing for the first time on stage. I presented in front of a lot of people. Can I have a beer, please? Thanks very much. This is a bit of a weird setup. It feels like I'm on trial in the future. So I hope things work out here. My name is Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU, and I appreciate your time this morning. So I work for a company called L2, and it's an accidental business. At NYU, we developed an algorithm to assess 1,250 data points of a brand's digital footprint across 11 geographies. We do it across 4 dimensions: social, digital, mobile, and then the site and e-commerce. And I believe we've collected more data on a brand's digital footprint than any organization in the world. And again, we run it across about 1,800 brands, and at the end of the day, we're train spotters or bird watchers, and that is, we think we see patterns in terms of where the biggest brands in the world are investing or divesting their precious resources, and we think we can make some observations and some predictions about what's going on in the world. We then sit down with brands and we tell them where they're strong and weak relative to their competitive set. So enough of the ad, let's get on it. About a year ago at a conference in Munich, I made a bunch of predictions around the 4 horsemen: Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. And I think these 4 firms are arguably the most influential firms in history, and maybe even the most influential organizations. And it's fun to track them because I think we learn a lot about technology and what's happening in our broader society. So last year, I did a talk. It went viral, at least for a professor. This is a lot of views for a prof. And at this event, I made this bold prediction that Amazon would decline in value. And I'll come back to that. I don't believe pure play e-commerce can work. I think every pure play e-commerce company is going to do one of 2 things: either go out of business and open stores. Consumers don't live in isolation of any one medium. The consumer is always right. She gets 3 choices. She can have a great online offering, she can have a great in-store offering, or she can have a great in-store and offline offering connected by a mobile phone and digital tissue. And I think it's option 3, and options 1 and 2 all go out of business. So I made this bold prediction. I felt very confident that Amazon would decline in value, and this is what happened. It's literally as if someone saw the talk and said, "We don't believe anything this guy's saying. Let's go buy the stock." So the first observation is we get it wrong all the time. So it's been an incredible year. These companies have gone from a combined market capitalization of $1.3 trillion, which is the GDP of Spain, to $1.6 trillion, which is almost the GDP of Canada. To give you a size of the amount of value these 300,000 something employees are adding, imagine the GDP of Canada spread across the population of Mannheim. The amount of outsized wealth creation from a small group of people is extraordinary, and we've never seen anything like it in history. GDP is relatively proportional to influence globally, so if you look at the market cap of these companies, they are in a lot of ways more influential than a lot of nations right now. Let's look at GDP versus market cap again. Amazon, you have Iceland, Serbia, and Romania. With Apple, you pick up Ireland and Finland. With Facebook, you get the Czech Republic and Belarus. And then finally, with Google, you pick up Bulgaria, the Ukraine, and Denmark. If you were to add in Alibaba, you'd have market capitalization that's equal to the GDP of Russia, which gives you a sense for just how economically dominant these companies are. Google has a market capitalization now that's equivalent to a number of incredible ad-supported companies that have been around for generations, if not centuries. Amazon, it's difficult to find enough retailers that add up to the value now of Amazon. Basically, it's every retailer in the world minus Walmart equals Amazon now. In November and December of 2015, so just a few months past, Amazon was responsible for 43% of all online sales in the US. The next 10 added up to 25%. Think about that. Amazon's doing 50% more sales than the next 10 combined. It's a little less concentrated in Europe, but it's a similar story. As you can see, Amazon is equivalent to almost the next 9 in terms of overall sales, growing at 20%. Cnova and Zalando, the only companies in Asda growing their e-commerce offerings faster. The growth of Apple. Apple is supposedly struggling. Apple is supposedly having a tough time, but you wouldn't know it if you actually look at the data. They added $51 billion in revenue to their top line last year. To give you a sense for that, this is not apples to apples. This is apples to oranges. This is their growth This is the total revenue of these companies. So last year, Apple added to its existing business the business of Vuitton, Coach, Hermes, Prada, Kering, Michael Kors, and Richemont. That's what they added in the 12 months of 2015. So in sum, it's Jeff, Larry, Tim, and Mark's world. We just shop, search, text, and post in it. At conferences like this, we like to talk about the winners. It's usually a vendor speaking, and people don't want to offend anybody, so they talk about all the winners. Everything's going to be great. The tide is lifting all boats. But I think it's just as interesting and oftentimes more insightful to talk about who the losers are. When you have companies like this growing 10, 20, 40% a year off of a big base in a 2% global growth economy, there's going to be people on the wrong end of that. Any company that's growing faster than 2% right now is taking share and income away from another firm. So who are the losers here? So I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones, and I like Game of Thrones analogies. And effectively, these companies are dragons. And when they're small, you can throw a goat or a rat at them, and that's fine. That sates their appetite. But as they get bigger, they have to start eating cities. They have to start going into other businesses to feed their voracious appetite. So the question isn't whether they'll go into TV, grocery, or cars. It's really just a matter of when they're going to go into these businesses, because they have no choice, because these are now very big dragons, and their appetite hasn't waned at all. So let's talk about media, specifically Facebook and Google. Average growth of 26%. Relative to some other great media companies that are either flat to declining. So as you can imagine, Facebook and Google are starting to eat the lunch of almost every media company in the world. In 2011, we predicted that the magazine industry would be Facebooked. At that time, Facebook was doing $2 billion in revenues, and the US magazine business was 16. Let's just look just a quick 5 years on. Now, the entire magazine community is doing $11 billion, and Facebook is doing 16. Facebook is now almost 50% bigger as a standalone business than the entire magazine business in the US. Google will soon surpass, in terms of revenue, the entire magazine business in the UK, probably this year. I think the sun has passed midday on what we think of as traditional advertising. I think the era of brand is coming to close. The traditional algorithm for building shareholder value over the last 30 or 40 years has built an average product, an average car, an average beer, an average shoe, and then wrap it in these amazing associations. Be like Mike, be young and hot, be American, be European and elegant, and pound away at these intangible associations, and then stuff the channel. And then if I drink Budweiser, I feel more American. If I choose Jif, I love my kids more. I think that has started to draw to a close, because now we have these tools where we can do more diligence, and we don't need the shorthand of brand to constantly give us that type of security. So as a result, the era of brand, if you will, or traditional brand building as a weapon, that sword is getting duller and duller. So let's look at the house that advertising built. The house that advertising built was CPG, consumer products goods, and last year in the US, 90% of the top 100 CPG brands lost share. If you're dependent upon advertising as your primary weapon for building value and share, your company is likely about to go into structural decline. Why? Because up starts with better product, more organic, farm to table, more innovative packaging, more interesting ways to create consumer discovery, are reallocating capital out of traditional brand building and into more innovation around the consumer discovery, the purchase experience, or some sort of post-purchase community. And they're starting to take share from the original gangsters, if you will, who've been totally dependent upon brand-based advertising. L'Oreal CEO. Brands that grew the most in 2014 were also very low ad promotion intensive, like Urban Decay, Kiehl's. NYX has no media, Kiehl's has no media, Urban Decay has no media. The CEO of Estee Lauder, the fastest growing brands such as MAC or Jo Malone or La Mer or Bobbi Brown are not advertised the traditional way. Ad agencies aren't dumb. These are smart people. They're not befuddled prey waiting to get disrupted. They've made big investments in digital, and they've also trying to change their organizations. My favorite stat, we have crawlers and scrapers that go onto LinkedIn and track all these companies. At Mindshare, MEC, or Group M, if you can't find the chief digital officer, if you have a meeting with him or her, it's no problem. There are 5 others. They have 6 chief digital officers. Ad tech is a great business, but the winners who emerge, it's going to be a lot like the Hunger Games. It's going to be very ugly to get there. There's going to be a lot of killing and a lot of death along the way. It's hard to imagine all these companies are going to survive. It's becoming a bit of a duopoly. This is the share price appreciation of Facebook and Google. And then towards the bottom, this is the share price decline of other public European and US ad tech companies relative to Facebook and Google. So quite frankly, ad tech is a great business as long as you work for Facebook or Google. We've entered into what I would say is a fairly unhealthy lottery economy where fewer and fewer companies emerge as winners. So venture capitalists, and there's probably a lot of people with venture capitalists on their board, are saying, establish yourself as the leader, go hard, become the leader, spend more money, and then break out and become a unicorn. And it's created this get rich or die trying mentality that I don't think is good for our economy, where we end up with a very small finite group of uber winners and everybody else kind of lying by the roadside. In 2015, it was a high point for US venture investment at $74 billion. However, the VC exits were the lowest they've been in a long time, again supporting that notion that it's becoming a winner-take-all economy. Now, what is the media product or service that kind of defines our age? What's the center of the universe? It's mobile advertising. 51% of mobile advertising is controlled by 2 companies globally right now, and every day their share grows. Let's talk a little bit about retail in the context of Amazon and Apple. Between these 2 companies, they grew their revenue last year $65 billion. It is difficult to find brands and retailers to create this chart to include to get up to $65 billion. In order to do that, we have to go outside these sectors and we have to add in the growth. I mean, look at this. Nike had its best year ever and it grew its revenues $3 billion last year. So we have to go outside the industry and we have to add in BMW, Volvo, Toyota, and Daimler's growth just to make up, just to equal the growth of Amazon and Apple from last year. Amazon was responsible for 51% of all retail growth in the US and 24% of all retail growth period last year in the US. I think Amazon has totally changed the game. Totally changed the game and the ethos around business. The same way in Game of Thrones changed the game for viewing. And that is, what did Game of Thrones do that was so different? Game of Thrones would build up these protagonists that we'd all fall in love with and think were the heroes and that would stick around for 7 or 8 seasons and we could root for them. And about the time you really bought into these people, they would kill them. And we've never seen that before. That'd be like if Goldfinger let the laser keep going in one of the Bond films, right? And James Bond had been killed in the very first Bond film. We've never seen anything like that. Amazon has done something we've never seen before, and that is it has replaced profits with vision. Profits are the heroin of the investment community, and Amazon never got them addicted to it. Investors love profits, they get used to them, they love them, and then if you take them away, they get very, very irritable. Walmart made the mistake of getting its investors hooked on the heroin of profits. Amazon has never done that. People say Amazon can't get to profitability. This is entirely their strategy. They manage their business perfectly to break even, and they show this huge vision, and they make progress against that vision every day without getting the marketplace hooked on that heroin. And when Amazon decides and announces that they've got to make additional capital expenditures to compete with Amazon and take their profits down as a result of that, and by the way, that's exactly the right response for Walmart. Their stock gets taken down dramatically the day they announce that. Again, don't take away our heroin. Mickey Drexler, the founder of The Gap at J. Crew, summarized it and said, how do you compete with a giant that doesn't want to make money? What is the product? What is the single item that defines our age? It would have to be the smartphone. Apple has 92% of the profits of the global smartphone market. 9 out of 10 dollars of profit from the entire global smartphone community go to one company. Samsung has 15%. I realize that makes no sense, but it does when you look at the rest. Everybody else fights over 7% of losses. Apple's doing poorly, right? PCs are going away. Don't tell them that. They shipped more PCs last year than they did the year before. The Apple Watch is a failure. It's a failure. Well, let's talk about Apple's failure. The media has a tendency to bifurcate everything Apple does into 1 or 2 categories. It's either going to change the world again or it's a failure. And the correct response around the Apple Watch is it's neither. It did well. It's not changing the world, but by no means is it a failure. So let's talk about this quote-unquote failure. Samsung owned 76% of the smartphone market before Apple came in. Apple came in and overnight basically took away the entire smartwatch market from Samsung overnight. This is over the course of 6 months, 0% share to 74% share. You want to talk to somebody in denial, talk to someone in the Swiss watch industry and ask them if the Apple Watch is having no impact on their business. There are now more smartwatches being shipped than there are Swiss watches. There's 8.1 million units, and of those 8.1 million units, Apple has a 63% share. Let's talk about Apple's failure. This is exactly when the Apple Watch was released. You've seen a 67% increase in Apple's stock price over the course of the last 3 years, even with its most recent tumult and its dip in its stock price. And pay close attention to when the Apple Watch, the failure, was released. Now let's look at the stock prices of the largest watch companies in the world. So ask watch companies now if they think the Apple Watch is still a failure. This is what happened when Fitbit announced their competitor to the Apple Watch. Literally the day they said to the market, we're going to try and compete with Apple, the market took their stock price down dramatically. Let's talk about migration between firms. We go out and we scrape who is going from what firm to what firm. LinkedIn is this powerful form of data where you can see the migration flows in between companies. And in a digital age, the team with the best player wins. So these are all the people that are migrating from these firms to either Google, Facebook, or Amazon. So P&G lost 316 people to Google, 54 to Facebook, and 360 to Amazon. And you think, well, that's no big deal, Scott. People trade players all the time. People leave, people come back. That's just part of business. But the obvious next question is, how many people from Google, Amazon, and Facebook went back to these firms? And by the way, these are amazing firms. These are incredible firms with fantastic products, hugely profitable, great places to work. So let's look at how many people went back. So we've had an incredible net outflow and the economy is reshaping. You can also track the migration in between the Gang of Four. And as you can see, and there's some stuff's misleading here because Apple has more employees because of its retail base. But right now, in terms of losses, Facebook has lost the least number of people. But there is another, the fair-haired blonde right now that's getting the most employees out of these four companies is, in fact, Uber. About 1 in 4 employees at Uber comes from one of the Gang of Four. Now, not to worry about the Gang of Four. The Gang of Four has this incredibly efficient HR recruiting department that hires people, trains them, and then they leave for one of the four. That recruiting HR department is known as Yahoo. People say Marissa Mayer is the most overpaid CEO in tech. I think she's the most underpaid recruiter in the history of tech. Let's talk about the path to $1 trillion. We are going to have our first $1 trillion company over the next 12 or 24 months. So let's speculate how they get there. I think it's either Facebook through monetization, Amazon through acquisition, Google through extension, Apple through articulation. So Facebook, monetization. Facebook is growing faster than any company in history of its size. It's defying the laws of gravity in that even though it hits the laws of big numbers, it doesn't seem to slow down its growth. It's growing over 40% a year off a $15 or a $20 billion a year run rate. That's exceptional. We've never seen that before. It's even starting to eat into Google's share. Now, Google continues to grow its revenues because the market is growing faster than their share losses, but Facebook is beginning to take share from Google. However, it's mostly a one-trick pony, and that is the majority of its revenues still come from advertising off of the Facebook platform. But what if they were to better monetize Facebook, Messenger, and WhatsApp? Instagram is the best acquisition in technology in the last 10 years. By the way, the worst acquisition in technology was Tumblr by Yahoo. But Instagram was $1 billion. Remember all the criticism the boy CEO got for overpaying for a company with 19 people? They stole that company. It's supposedly worth somewhere between 40 and 60 billion now. Instagram, that we track interactions. We look at the 200 beauty brands that we track. We add up the total interactions across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and then break down the percentage of interactions between those platforms. In 2013, Facebook had the greatest number of gross interactions among the three. But as time went on, you can see Instagram begins to dominate because Instagram has 100% organic reach, meaning every message that Nike sends out to its Instagram community reaches them, versus Facebook that has become pay to play, and now it's only 6% organic reach. You can see Facebook, arguably, if you take the size of the Facebook community times the number of interactions per post, Instagram is already the most powerful platform in the world. WhatsApp doubled its users to 900 million people in 2 years, and there is precedent for monetizing that. WeChat has fewer users and has over $2 billion in revenues. This is a company that is making huge bets on the future. They spend 40 cents on every revenue dollar on R&D. We've never seen that in technology for a company doing this much revenue. Most tech companies are somewhere between 6 and 12% and are smaller. And then you have a company with a bigger revenue base spending 40% of every dollar in R&D. As a result, it's arguably one of the most innovative companies in the world in terms of new product releases, its ability and its willingness to put out new products and fail, learn from them, and start again. So the case for $1 trillion is one of monetization. There are about 1 billion daily active users. They get about $16 a user. What if they, and a $300 billion market cap, what if they were able to get to 2 billion daily active users, get that $16 to 50 by monetizing their other three assets, 100 billion in revenue? I think that gets them to a $1 trillion market cap. By the way, that $2 billion daily active users and that $50 per user is just if they continue their growth on both those metrics over the next 3 to 4 years. Let's talk about Amazon. I think Amazon gets there through acquisition. Jeff Bezos denied the rumor that they were opening hundreds of stores. I think that's true. I think they are going to open thousands of stores. The cost of serving a consumer, fulfillment, getting stuff to your home, the cost of acquiring things online, and then minusing the magic and mystery of the in-store feel for brand building makes pure play e-commerce unsustainable for everyone, including Amazon. We have the first example of this, the first signals. It looks like they are starting to open stores. I believe that they're going to make a transformative acquisition. My best bets are Macy's and Carrefour. If they acquired these companies, here's the revenue, EBITDA growth, and valuation. They would end up with a company that not only gives them greater revenue and greater access to luxury brands and grocery in Europe, but takes them from 68 fulfillment centers in the US to about 950, because Macy's has converted their stores into these amazing warehouses. They'd also pick up another couple thousand points of distribution as Carrefour is also turning their stores into warehouses. It's a great time to buy. Amazon stock is up. Carrefour's and Macy's are down. Amazon could pay a 50% premium for each of these stocks and only endure a 15 to 17% dilution of their company, of their stock, to buy these companies, and they would end up with a company that does $300 billion in revenue, have EBITDA of $50 billion. Granted, I'm assuming Amazon Web Services continues to grow at its continuing rate, and they get efficiencies out of these acquisitions. Growth of 12% a year, and a company that is truly multi-channel, doing 50% in bricks and 50% in clicks. I think that's a $1 trillion market cap company. By the way, you do not want to work for or invest in overnight delivery right now. Jeff Bezos has announced that they are reluctantly getting into overnight delivery. Yeah, I'm sure he's very reluctant about that. How have these guys set themselves up for vulnerability? They have raised their prices 83% over the last 10 years. They have just been crying out for competition. Guys, here comes Amazon. The way the luxury business got fat and happy raising its prices since the recession faster than inflation, stuck on their chin. We said last year, LVMH, Kering Group, Gucci, here comes Apple. The same thing is happening here. Amazon is now renting planes, renting trucks, and is going to be in this business. Google extension. Google is an incredible company, arguably the greatest concentration of IQ ever assembled on the planet. There's only two things that make money here, YouTube and Google, and they recognize they need to get into other businesses. So the question is, where should they go? If you're in an industry and you're trying to think, am I ripe to be disrupted? Would one of these players with their IQ and their capital come in and threaten me? It's pretty easy to create a disruption index, and that is to look at the price of inflation. I was not expecting that. Did everybody else hear that, or am I having a stroke? Apple is ripe for disruption. Oh, excuse me. Cable was ripe for disruption. Hulu, Netflix came in. There's an industry that's even more ripe for disruption. It's a $1.6 trillion industry. Any guesses? It's education. And I believe that one of the four horsemen is going to get into education. To drive this point home, I teach a class called Brand in a Digital Age, 325 students, 6,000 people each, almost $2 million. That's $163,000 a night. I'm good at what I do, but I'm not worth this. To just compare myself to some other people, these are some famous footballers who make about the same amount per week. Granted, my agent, NYU, takes a 98% commission, but you get the point. This means that we get paid more every week than the entire cast of Star Wars, with the exception of Harrison Ford. By the way, I think I would be fantastic in Star Wars. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the force is strong with this one. Adele is making a lot of money now because of an amazing last album, but on her last tour, she made approximately 100,000 quid per performance, or her and I make approximately the same amount of money. Comparative advantage is a way of saying, if you can do what I can do fairly easily, but I can't do what you're doing, and we're making the same amount of money, it means that I'm being overpaid. So to bring home how outrageous education costs have become in the US, and to show the distinction between my and Adele's talent, I am going to do something that you cannot unsee. Let's talk about Apple. I have 2.5 minutes. Facebook connecting the world, a fantastic mission, I get it. If we could bring all the people together in the world, the empathy, the magic that's going to come off of us bumping off of each other, that's incredibly powerful, I get it, I'm going to buy their stock. Amazon, the world's biggest store, I get it, compelling vision, I'm going to buy their stock. Google, organizing the Earth's information, super powerful, going to buy their stock. What is Apple's mission? It's the strongest brand in the world. They're incredible at what they do. They make life-changing products, but it's not easy to distill their mission down to something that investors can understand. So as a result, the investment community evaluates Apple in the context of every single product release. And if it's not amazing, they take the stock price down. As a result, it trades at a multiple of EBITDA of 7 versus 19, 39, and 40 for the other. If Apple can compel or articulate a compelling vision such that we get a sense for what they're trying to do across multiple products and just get to a multiple of around 12, they're at $1 trillion. And that's why I think Apple's going to get to $1 trillion faster. Some head fakes, beacons, mass customization, wearables, I just don't think they're going to live up to their hype. My favorite is the idea of 3D printing, this notion that we can get stuff really cheap, really fast. Well, guess what? We already have that. It's called China. What's the next big head fake? I think a ton of VCs across Europe and the US are going to be wrecked by this mother of all head fakes. And that is, we have learned nothing from Google Glass. Would Hermes have ever let this happen? Google Glass isn't a wearable. It's a prophylactic ensuring you'll never conceive a child, as no one will ever get near you. People are very serious about what they put on themselves, and I think this is the next big non-thing. I think virtual reality is a big head fake. Okay, this is what you look like with this thing on your head.
Oh my goodness, that turned your stomach! What happened to the track?
This is the narrative. Right now it's, oh, this is going to change everything. Then it's going to change business, it's going to change entertainment, it's going to change video games, it's going to change commercial applications. No, it's going to change niche commercial applications. No, it's going to change porn is where it'll end up. What about society? I think Google is a modern day God. We used to pray and get something back. Now we type in symptoms and treatment of croup and it comes back to us. Amazon is a marketplace. Apple is procreation. Kids come to my office and say, what should I do with my life? And I say, don't compete against the brain. It's too smart. It starches out margin and basic food and transportation. The heart is better. Choosing moms choose Jif. Figure out a way to tap into emotion. Move further to the genitals. That's where you really start to get better margins. Men don't buy Teslas to be environmentally conscious. They buy Teslas to signal to women that they're rich but still groovy deep inside. You should sleep with me. This is a better business. Apple is the first company in history to migrate down the torso, a better computer than it's saying to our hearts, and now the ultimate signal of wealth, the ultimate signal of education, and the ultimate signal of opportunity to have a random sexual encounter is the iOS operating system. Facebook is love. It's connecting people all over the world. Some very meaningful things happening with these technologies, products that are more environmentally conscious, giving young people born at the right education in the right places incredible opportunity, and a certain level of income inequality is a good thing because it motivates us to work harder. And I love this message I got from Uber asking that I input my destination as the driver is hearing impaired. So there's some very meaningful things. The question is the greatest concentration of IQ, intelligence, and capital in the history of mankind, are we really addressing, quote unquote, the profound problems around health, around safety, around an absence of crime, things like that? I was asked to end on an optimistic note, which is difficult for me, but I will. The brain, and there's a lot of discussion right now around the rise of the machines and the threat of the machines. All of these people, these 4 companies, are using technology to scale, but at the end of the day, you can reverse engineer them to passion, to desire, to risk-taking. The brain is absolutely the most superior processor by a long shot versus any microchip. As Alan Turing said, could the machines take over the world? He said, yes, but you can't make them want to. Love. I think Facebook is the most successful company in the history of mankind. It's more successful than Buddha, Allah, communism, capitalism, the Kardashians, and it's primarily helping us love at a scale. The strongest indicator of your life expectancy is 3, your genetics, 2, your lifestyle, but #1 indicator or signal of how long each of you is going to live is how many people in your life you love. Not how many people that love you. People who have a lot of people who love them report more rewarding lives, but they don't live any longer. It's how many people you love. When you take care of your parents and they move in, your life expectancy goes up. New mothers do not die. Empathy. I think the most exciting thing taking place is broadband. That gives us the ability to see real-time things going on in the world. We can walk in people's shoes. Democracies don't declare war on each other. When we feel each other's pain, we're likely to become a more progressive and better society. And as a result, some wonderful things are happening. Life expectancy and literacy are up. Poverty has been cut by 3/4 just in the last 25 years, which is arguably the greatest shared victory we have in the history of mankind. Homicide rate is down, and if you have a child today, his or her life expectancy is 100, and the likelihood he or she will die at the hands of another human being is the lowest in human history. In sum, brain, love, empathy. When we're on a beach, when we're on a desert, naked, no access to any technology, we have all the assets, technologies, and platforms to dramatically change the world. My name is Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU, and I appreciate your time.